Welcome to the Banff World Media Festival. Your session is about to begin.
Right now. My name is Seamus O'Regan, and it is my great pleasure to interview the amazing Jeanne Beker. Roll the tape.
The rock-inspired styles of New York's Stephen Sprouse are winning international acclaim. When fashion television first went on the air, it was a very different kind of scene than it is today.
So y'all know Fashion Television, y'all was my first interview, y'all the first ones to believe in me, the first ones to launch me.
Can I just ask you what you thought of the... I can't talk, actually. I'm afraid now. Oh, I can't speak, sorry.
I've been watching you since I was, you know, I mean, not to you know, but I'm a big fan.
Hi, are you a big Zach Posen fan?
Zach Posen.
Zach Posen. I refuse to chase Paris Hilton. I refuse. Can I just ask you a quick question? Lindsay, hi. How are you doing? Are you not doing interviews?
No.
Oh, okay. Imagine coming to a place like this and not wanting to do interviews.
And it was magical for her, for me, for all of us. Again, thank you so much.
I like to hear that from you.
Yeah.
Huh? Somebody else, I would say, just a compliment, but from you, I trust you.
Thank you, sweetie. Did you like the show?
I loved it. It was breathtaking.
Okay, well, you look pretty fabulous yourself. Thank you. Okay, did I even... So, like, I feel so cheap.
I've been trying to get on Fashion Television for like years. I figured the best way to do it is to show up at Marc Jacobs and you guys will be here. And then I lucked out. I can't even believe it. I'm like in shock right now.
You just look stunning. And thank you so much.
Jessica.
And I'm a fan of your show.
Oh, that's nice. Were you rolling on that?
Ladies and gentlemen, Fashion Television, she is syndicated in 140 countries, 27 years she has interviewed 1,500 international designers, artists, photographers, 500 Canadian designers, artists, photographers, and that's kind of a range. The amazing Jeanne Beker.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi. Hi.
The really funny thing is we were just about to come up and Jeanne insisted that I have a coffee so that we were equally caffeinated. But I don't think anybody could be equally caffeinated to Jeanne Beker. How you doing?
I know, for a former mime artist, I usually never shut up.
Oh,
so
God, can we start there? Because my introduction to Jeanne as someone growing up in St. John's, Newfoundland, there was a children's show that CBC had called Skipper and Company. And, you know, I don't really even know what it was about. It was about a couple of guys pretending to be old-time fishermen, you know, and kids would be around them and there'd be songs. And all of a sudden, this Parisian mime came out of nowhere with a beret and a striped shirt. And it had nothing to do with anything else that was going on, but it was captivating, and it was you.
Yes. Well, I know.
What year was that?
Landed in Newfoundland in 1975 as a bona fide trained mime artist. I trained with the old man that had taught Marcel Marceau in Paris.
How did that happen?
73, 74. How did I study mime?
Like, how did, or why?
Okay, and when I was born, why?
Well, we'll get to that.
Why was because I wanted, okay, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a performer. I wanted to be a communicator. I wanted to be on the stage primarily, I think. And I wanted to learn, and I started acting professionally when I was about 16 years old. I went to an audition, and the CBC was having an open casting call for a sitcom they were doing, and I actually ended up landing a role in this CBC sitcom.
Not the role you wanted, but...
Yeah, but I got to play the girl's best friend or something. I was a recurring character, so that was pretty cool. Because there I was in high school, but I was also acting, and I started doing commercials and movies of the week, that kind of thing. But I really thought, a lot of people are getting parts on the basis of the shape of their nose or the color of their hair, the tone of their voice. I thought, I've really got to learn a technique that is so exacting. And with mime, you either create the illusion or you don't. So there was something very romantically appealing about this to me, who was, kind of suffering artist.
It's so funny seeing pictures of you then, because you're like all withdrawn and moody. And that's not who everybody knows.
Yeah, well, of course, because I was, in my angsty, artistic phase, I guess.
Yeah.
I still get withdrawn and moody sometimes, trust me. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I ended up going to Paris because I heard about this old man that had taught Marceau and was still teaching in his little house in the Bois de Boulogne. Again, that sounded so incredibly romantic to me. So I went there for a year, 73, 74, moved back to Toronto, a bona fide trained mime artist. And
tons of money in that.
Ran off. Anyway, and then to make a long story short, ran off to Newfoundland.
They'll make a long story long. It's interesting.
Ran off to Newfoundland with the man I was in love with, who was doing his postgraduate work in folklore at Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland. Why I decided to take that leap of faith and go to Newfoundland, ended up as the only mime artist in the province. I thought, okay, this is not going to be good.
In a province of talkers, right? You were the silent one.
Yeah, it's like, Ma, you look some pale, my dear. What's the matter, cat got your tongue? Like, I always joke that the Newfoundlanders didn't get me, but Newfoundlanders are the most exquisite people on the planet. I absolutely adore them. And I thought, no, I got to find something to do that I'm going to make some money at. And unbelievably enough, at that time, there wasn't a lot of arts reporting going on the CBC radio.
Anywhere.
There wasn't really. So I said, I've studied the arts. I studied theater at university, and I studied mime in Paris, and maybe I could report on the arts for CBC radio. I don't know how I had chutzpah. The #1 ingredient for any young people out there that want to make it in this business, you got to have it in large doses. And I just knocked on the door of CBC Radio, and there was a young producer there by the name of Johnny Dalton that had just been handed this consumer show called Radio Noon, and he was looking for interesting things to do. And I said, well, what about doing reports and reviews? He goes, well, this is a consumer show. But I said, yeah, but I could tell people whether it's worth it to spend $10 on that album or $5 on that theater ticket, So he said, okay, we'll try it. So I just started interviewing artists. Such a vibrant art scene going on there at the time, especially. Codco was just starting, and all the great ballet companies were coming through town, and great old fiddle players like Rufus Skinchard. And so I ended up just doing these arts interviews and reviews and packaging documentaries for the network, and did that for a while. Now, so the mime thing, I still taught mime on the side because I didn't want to totally, give up my artistry. And one of the fellows that I was co-hosting the radio show with was a fellow named Ray Ballou, and he was Skipper from Skipper and Company.
And that's how you got on that. Now, so you ended up going to Toronto after that, back to Toronto. Yeah,
so in 1978, sort of thinking, okay, now that I've got all this experience in radio, I should go and hit the big time. And the fellow that I was with was sort of tired of interviewing the toothless fiddlers around the Bay for his folklore projects. He thought, I'll come back to Toronto to study urban folklore, and I'm going to do my thesis on strippers and cab drivers and cocktail waitresses. So let's move back to Toronto. So we moved back to Toronto. I knocked on every radio station door, and relentlessly called a fellow by the name of J.R. Wood, who was the program director of Chum, 1050 Chum, the hot top 40 station at the time. And finally they succumbed and said, okay,
How old were you at that time?
So, well, let's see, 1978, I was 26.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you just pounded and pounded
and
on doors.
And I got on the radio, and there I was, a Chum Good News girl. And serendipitously, that was the year that Chum bought City TV.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they thought, well, we could cross-promote this personality, this good news girl, Jeanne Beker, with J.D. Roberts, one of our boss jocks, who now, of course, is John Roberts. He's at Fox, formerly of CNN and CBS. And they put us on a show, groundbreaking show, called The New Music in 1979.
It was groundbreaking.
Very hip. I mean, this is pre-MTV.
Yeah.
Everyone takes it for granted. Oh, yeah, music's always been on television. Well, yeah, there were always shows like Top of the Pops in the UK or American Bandstand that Dick Clark used to do, but there weren't shows that really went into the dressing rooms of the rock stars and went on the tour buses with them and really got them in the studio and really, talked to them where they lived and exposed these personalities, and that's what we did with the new music, flying by the seat of our pants. I was just thrilled to get back into a visual medium again, but didn't really know what we were doing, but really making it up as we went along, and stylistically, the style of television we were doing was really what set the tone for the whole MTV thing. You know, the swish pans, the doing away with the tripod, just
raw.
You know, yeah, raw, exactly. You know, we would knock on the rock star's hotel room door, and the camera would be rolling before the rock star even opened the door. So we'd get, you know, life as it unfolded. So we'd, you know, just wander into, you know, Roger Daltrey's hotel room, and there he was with Keith Moon, and there they were, like, smashing lampshades for the benefit of the TV cameras. And at that time, a lot of these musicians were really inventing themselves in terms of imagery. They hadn't had the experience of really being public figures in that way.
Yeah.
They would hide behind their music and their performance, but all of a sudden they were asked to start talking and be themselves, and it was interesting to see, you know, just how they handled the media.
You didn't have a team of an army of publicists and managers. I mean, you just knocked on their door and they answered. I mean,
yeah,
that's
I know.
unheard of.
I know, but you know, fast forward to then, you know, 6 years later in 1985 when we launched Fashion Television, and when you think of the incredible media frenzy that a fashion show causes today, that you go backstage at a fashion show and there are literally, you know, scores of media crews from around the world clamoring to get these bits and bytes. And when we started doing it in 1985, we were it. I mean, we were like, it was me and my cameraman. Nobody else really back there. Once in a while, we'd run into Elsa Clench, you know, the CNN fashion journalist that would ask questions like, why beige? But we were asking about, you know,
it's the question everybody wants answered.
I still don't know the answer.
I know, nobody does. Why beige? Why, Jeanne? Let's go back to just when you interviewed rock stars. You wrote in your first book, first autobiography, that dealing with those egos really prepared you for fashion. Like, you dealt with some pretty big egos.
Absolutely. And really, after, you know, my foray into, you know, the rock world and thinking that, you know what, I'm getting a little too old to be wearing these vinyl jeans, and, you know, how many more tour buses am I going to be riding, and how many more times can I interview Rod Stewart? You know, I was looking for the next big thing. And I thought, I just knew that I had to be in an arena where the characters were larger than life, where the personalities were colorful, because I knew that inherently that's what would make great television, and that's why I was in the business.
Because you were in a very successful show. I mean, the new music was doing really well. Was that a big leap for you?
Not really, because in some ways, as I say, I was really ready to start something new. I was chomping at the bit. I mean, I think, you know, ignorance is bliss, so when you're young and desperately hungry just to ride the next big wave, you really take those types of chances without really thinking too much about it. I think as we get older, it's like, oh, but I'm with a really hot show, and what if I leave, and what if it's not going to be as great, and what if I'm not going to make the same kind of market? You know, when you're younger, for me, or anyways, maybe I should own that statement. When I was younger, I didn't worry about that stuff. I just wanted to make noise. I wanted the new and the next, and I wanted to keep on blazing trails as we had blazed with the new music. Because, you know, we launched Much Music in 1983, and that was exciting to be the first, you know, chick on Much Music. You know, I wasn't officially a VJ. When they first launched, it was just J.D. Roberts, Christopher Ward, and I was like the news gal, hosting a little package called News Flash or Rock Flash or something, Rock Flash.
Rock Flash.
So, you know, and that was incredibly exciting, but then it was like, okay, so we've done this, we've popularized music, you know, on television, and, you know, what can I do now that would really excite me, that would be, you know, the next new challenge? And I heard that they were talking about putting a fashion show together at City TV, and it was Jay Levine and Marcia Martin, actually, two producers there. And Jay was this hot, you know, producer, young producer in the promotions department. You know, he was doing like these little commercials at the station, but he thought fashion was really sexy, and he thought it would be a really hot thing to put sexy fashion on TV and great hot models. But his idea was to put a hot model on as a fashion VJ. You know, he didn't really want someone like me, and I was sort of over the hill by that point. I was like, you know what, like 20, Do the math. Well, I don't know, in 1985, I was, oh, gee, I was like 33 already, over the hill. But, you know, for him, he wanted some like 20-year-old. And I remember walking into the lobby of City TV one day, and there was like an open casting call. There must have been like, you know, 80 girls or something, you know, gorgeous, you know, hot young things.
That's 160
shoulder pads.
shoulder
What's going on here? You know, what's going on here? And someone said, oh, they're auditioning for that fashion VJ. You know, they're looking for a girl to host this fashion clip show that they're going to be producing. And I thought, hold on a minute, that sounds like a show that I'd like to do. I like fashion. I'm looking for the next big thing.
But you went in, you had to convince them.
Oh, yeah.
That you know.
I convinced them, like, I paid my dues. I'd worked really hard. You know, they owed it to me to, you know, they didn't really owe it to me, but I had this in my mind that they did, so I tried to make them feel guilty. And come on, you know, you got to let me try this. I'm really good at interviewing people. They went, we don't want interviews. We don't want to hear what these people have to say. We just want the sexy imagery. We just want, I said, I'll do whatever you want, but, you know, I thought maybe if I could squeeze a few little interviews in there and do with the designers what we had done with the rock stars, expose these people behind the labels. And sure enough, we did the first pilot episode, and the first word back from, you know, the people upstairs is, okay, it was good, but it wasn't meaty enough. Maybe we should put some more talking heads in there. But so it was like, okay, great. So we went out to do the next show and started profiling designers, and the rest is fashion television history.
But were you intimidated at all? Because that is such, as you talked about it last night too. I mean, the fashion industry. When I think about it, I'd never really thought of it as being a very closed space, because I've watched you, and you've always made it open. But it was a closed space.
Oh, very much so.
And I mean, how do you crack it? How do you get in?
You know, you just do it. You just, first of all, offer designers a kind of exposure that they hadn't gotten until that point, but they were thirsty for, because as I, again, go back to the music thing, they had seen what television had done for the music industry, with, you know, the advent of all those great music videos, and all of a sudden, you know, the music scene was totally booming, largely a result of all the exposure that musicians were getting on MTV. So fashion people wanted that too. And it wasn't a funny kind of time too when they started seeing themselves potentially as these, you know, big branded rock stars. And we saw like Johnny Versace hanging out with Elton John. You know, we saw designers in the same light as rock stars. And I just think that they welcomed it because they hadn't been offered it before, and they thought, well, this is sort of an interesting thing. Okay, we'll try being on TV. And they certainly loved the pieces that we produced, because we would take their clothes out onto the street and shoot out there, which was a very unconventional thing to do. Until that point, they had only been showing their garments on a runway or in the pages of the fashion magazine. But we really helped bring a lot of what they were doing alive, and we helped make it more relevant and certainly expose them to a whole other audience. Because, you know, a lot of people have a penchant for fashion, they love it, but not everybody is going to actually go and buy a fashion magazine, you know, especially men, you know, sometimes they're, but this was a way of bringing fashion into people's living rooms and just really popularizing the designers' brands in quite a wonderful way. And you know, I used to say, I'm not like from 60 Minutes, I wasn't like an investigative journalist, I was never going to put anybody up against a wall. I was all about celebrating people and celebrating what they were doing. So they were very comfortable with me, and maybe because I myself, you know, had that heart of a creative artist, you know, even though I, you know, always feel that I sold out, but c'est la vie, you know, they appreciated me, or I connected with them on some level, and I ended up having a great rapport with so many of them.
You're always very sympathetic with them.
Yeah, very. I mean, I can't imagine anything. I thought being a musician was hard. You know, you're only as good as your last album. I can't imagine anything more difficult, really, than being maybe being a brain surgeon. I know, being a designer, because you have to constantly not only put out these collections that are going to resonate with the media, with buyers, and with the customer at the end of the day, but you yourself have to put yourself out there as an appealing kind of branded image. You know, and look at the pressures that, you know, some of them have succumbed to when you think of, you know, the late, great Alexandra McQueen, you know, someone who I had a great bond with, someone who was just a remarkably sensitive soul. I really think the pressures of the business and that whole, you know, fickleness of fashion and the lonely feelings of being, you know, put on that kind of pedestal, you know, were essentially maybe what did him in when he took his own life a couple of years ago, or John Galliano.
I remember talking to you on Canada AM.
Yeah.
I think it was the next day.
Yeah.
You were really emotional.
It's a pressure cooker of a business. It's a, you know, it's like, it's so funny because, okay, when it works and you see someone with a successful, you know, fashion label, and isn't it beautiful, and they're putting their aesthetic out there, and they make potentially a lot of money doing it. But I see young kids that want to design, and I think, oh, thank God my daughters don't want to be clothing designers, because I don't know how I would, when you want to encourage, you know, any young person to follow their dreams. But boy, oh boy, that's a big, tough business. That's a really tough business, and I've really seen it from the inside out. And now, you know, with my own clothing line, you know, I really get to see it on a very practical level too. It's a crazy business.
How did the industry not change you?
How did the industry not change me?
No, it didn't. I mean, it seems like it changes a lot of people. And
when you talk about the industry, do you mean the
fashion.
TV industry, the fashion industry? Because I was in that world, but not of that world.
Yeah.
And even now, where I suppose, well, I'm more in that world now because, as I say, I'm there, like, you know, I'm pitching, you know, my product to buyers and hoping that the consumers, you know, are gonna buy into it, and you know, so it's very much, you know, I guess I'm pretty immersed in it now. I'm old enough now, I think, to maybe see the forest for the trees a little bit, and to be a little more objective about it. But when you're, you know, when you're young and really hungry and impressionable and sensitive, you know, that's another thing too. I think one of the best bits of advice I ever got in my life many years ago when I was still doing the new music was from a fellow who said, you know, remember Walt Grealis?
Yeah.
You know, the start of the Juno Awards. He said to me, you know, you're going to be great in this business and in this industry as long as you don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
You know, that's really, and I always tried to keep that, you know, at the back of my mind, as sensitive, you know, as I am, and as vulnerable as I always felt. I always thought you have to maintain an air of irreverence about yourself, or, you know, the big bad guys out there are definitely going to do you in.
There was it's a fine line, and even, you know, you can even pick it up on the clips that we just saw of FT, where you have that respect for what they do, but there's an utter irreverence as well, and that's a very fine line to walk, to make sure that you still have credibility in the eyes of the people that you're interviewing, and at the same time have credibility in the eyes of your audience.
Yeah, but I think the best of them, and when I say the best of them, I mean the ones with the greatest hearts, the ones that are truly great people, generous of spirit, and besides being wonderful creative artists, are the ones who, at the end of the day, don't really take themselves all that seriously either, and realize that what they're doing is not going to, you know, cure cancer. Or, you know, I think of Karl Lagerfeld, and, you know, who's in some ways maybe become a caricature of himself. Yeah, I mean, he's all about, you know, he gets it. He's the coolest guy. I just absolutely adore him. You know, you can, you know, he has a good laugh about things.
I always thought he was so serious.
Yeah, no. Oh, no, not really. No. He has an air about him where, you know, no. He's way too smart to be that serious. And you know, I don't know. I just get the feeling from him that he really gets it. Or Jean-Paul Gaultier, you know, another one of the greats who I adore. Certainly McQueen, you know, always had that edge to him. You know, never really took it all that serious. I think, you know, the ones that, you know, that really matter to me anyways, I really get it on that level.
That's a wonderful clip where Karl Lagerfeld says, I don't know if you could hear it, but because his accent is a little thick, but I think you were complimenting him on his collection, was it 2 years ago? And he said, well, from somebody else, I would just say it's a compliment, but from you, that means a lot.
No,
to me.
I was saying something about how the presentation was magical. That was the first time, actually, that he had met Tavi Gevinson, that young, you know, girl from from the suburbs of Chicago. I think she's really quite a delight. And she caused a huge media stir, of course, because it was that moment in time when people realized just how much power bloggers, you know, could indeed wield, that she was sitting in the front row of a Chanel couture show. Yeah. And she got to meet Karl, and, you know, so when I went up to Karl at the end to pay my homage to him and do a little interview, she was there, and I said, oh, this has been such a magical experience for Tavi to have seen this show as her first show, and it was just such a great show. And he said to me, yes, well, you know what, a lot of people tell me that, but coming from you, I trust you, I believe you, you know, that's really nice. And it's like, oh, yeah. So
That's the culmination of, at that point, 25 years' work.
But this is, I mean, this is it. This is what, you know, these things don't happen overnight.
Yeah.
These relationships do not happen overnight. It really takes so many hours of TLC to cultivate those kinds of relationships. And so many times when, you know what, it can be a very demeaning, demoralizing thing. I mean, if you take yourself too seriously again, you are totally going to be screwed. I cannot tell you the hours that I have spent standing in, you know, stilettos at the end of a long day waiting for my, you know, big 3 minutes with Karl Lagerfeld. I mean, sometimes, I don't know, it may look easy that, oh, all of a sudden I'm there, Karl's there, we're doing the interview, everything's great, you know. We did try over the years to show sometimes just how tough it was, you know, to get in. But even with all the access that I have, even though the designers know me personally and, oh, hi, Jeannie, and isn't that great, there's still a certain protocol to follow sometimes when you're covering these shows, let's say, and you are there with, you know, 500 other crews from around the world, and, you know, you're not the #1, you know, crew, although I got treated that way sometimes because Fashion Television was so well respected, but, you know, I wasn't like the crew from CNN or, you know, even the digital crew from Style.com gets, you know, a lot of clout because that's a Condé Nast owned operation. You know, we're the crew from Fashion Television Canada. Even though our show was seen in 100-odd countries, we were still handled usually by the Canadian arm of the PR companies. So I worked my ass off for that access. You know, make no mistake about it. That is something that does not come easy. It's the most precious commodity I feel I have as a brand, and I feel that any journalist could have is access. I mean, wouldn't you agree? Agreed. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't get to the people, how are you gonna make magic? You know, how are you gonna make television? How are you gonna, you know, write your story?
There's also, I mean, it's also an industry, journalism or television in general, where I think it's fraught with a lot of people entering into it who demand immediate fame. They want immediacy. Don't you see that?
I see it so much, and especially now in this, and I hate to say, I feel like an old, you know, fogey here, you know, and these kids today, you know, what's the matter with kids today? But honestly, we live in this culture of instant gratification, and certainly, you know, unquestionably, we're used to, you know, you click here and you will get to the destination. So people, there's so many kids coming up to me. First of all, the thing that drives me craziest is, you know, young girls coming up to me like, I want your job. You know, it's like, get your own job. You know, my job, I created this job. This job did not exist before I started doing it. You know, I know it might be harder now to invent something fabulous because it seems like we've done it all, but come on, there's got to be a lot of new trails to blaze. Why would someone want to do something that I've been doing for over a quarter of a century? I mean, that's not very imaginative. But besides that, like, I got a tweet the other day from some person saying, I really want to be a TV host, you know, what's the best way to go about doing that? And it's like, this is another thing that I think this age of, you know, TV presenters is really over, or it should be over, or if it's happening now, it's really doomed, because you end up with people who are just like on TV and they're reading a script and they're delivering stuff, and it can't be about that unless you're passionate about something, unless you've got an area of expertise, and maybe not just one area of expertise. I think you've got to cultivate as many skills as possible. In the old days, it used to be, you know, jack of all trades, master of none, you know, just do one thing and do it well, and that's enough. That is not the case anymore, and I talk to a lot of, you know, groups of students, and, you know, always saying to them, you know, you owe it to yourself to hone as many skills as possible. Make yourself an incredibly interesting person, and the rest will follow. But just to have that in your mind, you know, I want to be on TV, like, what for? Like, who wants to be Kim Kardashian? You know, I mean, I don't know, well, maybe a lot of girls do. But to me, it's not, you know, I don't think it's a very noble thing, and I think it's not a career that's going to really give you the kind of longevity that at the end of the day you're going to want.
You didn't just blaze a trail when it came to fashion television. In a way, when you look at it, you blazed a trail for reality TV.
In a way, and I do have to credit the brilliant, eccentric, enigmatic, Moses Neimer. Yeah. The absolute, honestly, I do think that he's a genius. And I think I succeeded, you know, because of him, maybe in spite of him. because he was such a forward thinker, and always in those early days of that I started doing that television, like the late 70s, early 80s, he always talked about, you know, he asked me, I remember, would I mind having a camera with me 24 hours a day, you know, in my closet, you know, in my kitchen while I was making breakfast, on the way to work.
Nobody was doing that.
And it was like, yeah, I thought, yeah, that would be a cool thing. Unfortunately, we never did it. But his dream was always to have the City TV building that is now, you know, the CTV Bell Media building, wired for, so you could plug cameras in all over the place, and he really wanted to follow the newscasters and the reporters around through the building and watch the business of making television unfold in that way. And you know, so this is a guy that was talking about this 3 decades ago.
Yeah.
And everybody was saying, well, that's sort of crazy. Who's really going to want to expose themselves that way? I don't know. You know, people were like, you know, I should have really taken that ball and ran with it back then, because now, of course, it's just everybody's doing it.
It was such an invigorating time, too, just to go back to it, but I love, you know, the stuff that you were doing back then. I mean, in the bathtub with the police, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, again, that was the brilliant late John Martin, just a magnificent guy who came over here from England, originally, I think, to work on the CBC late night talk show. I've forgotten now what the name of that show was, but this is quite a while back. And he pitched the idea to Moses to do this music show called The New Music. And he had this incredible air of irreverence. Like, he was just so in your face, and really taught me that style of television. So we were always thinking of real out-of-the-box places to do interviews. And when the police first came to town, and this is before they really became such huge superstars.
This is Ghost in the Machine days, I think, right?
Maybe a little before Inagata Davida. You know, I don't remember what that first album was, but I was, you know, had the opportunity to interview Andy Summers, the guitarist from the Police, and I thought, okay, well, where should we do this interview? And you know, we had access to his hotel room, and I thought, like, would you do it in the bathtub? I was just trying to be as, you know, outrageous as possible. You know, for a little girl from Bathurst Manor, you know, the suburbs, I was going to be the big rock chick. And he said, okay, I will. And he whipped off his pants and, you know, got into the bathtub with, you know, the hotel room bubble bath. I don't think, it couldn't have probably even been real bubble bath, whatever it was that we put in the tub to try and make it look frothy. Didn't really hide too much. We have to be careful how we shot it. I sat on the edge of the tub. This is like 1980 or something, and interviewed
And you had to make sure the froth was in the right location.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and every once in a while, he was like, he had a T-shirt on top of his, you know, whatever, privates, and he's like pulling his. It was hilarious. So we did this interview. It became, you know, a bit of folklore almost. It became a kind of popular, wonderful bit of tape that surfaced on YouTube. And so then, many years later, like fast forward to about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, the police got back together, came back to Toronto. Andy Summers had a big photography book out at the time, and I thought, well, I would like to put him on Fashion Television, because we cover photography. That would be a good excuse.
Right.
Like, let's get him. So we actually phoned his manager and said, you know, Jeanne Beker would love to do an interview with Andy Summers and his new book. She interviewed him many years ago in Toronto in a bathtub. Does he remember? And sure enough, he did remember, and he says, okay, great, yeah, I'll do the interview with her. And he started thinking, well, you know, what should we do? What type of interview? And I said to the producer that was on the phone, I said, you know what, tell him, you know, that I'll do it in the bathtub again, but this time I'll get in the bathtub with him. And of course, he said, yes, absolutely, that sounds great. And I thought, oh yeah, right, that's gonna happen. So a couple weeks later, the police came to town. I went to see, you know, Andy and went backstage after the show, and I said, well, tomorrow's our big interview. And he goes, yes, and I understand you're getting into the bathtub with me. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, okay, whatever, I'll see you. And I thought, oh my Lord, what have I committed to? I got to the hotel room, and you know, Andy was there showing me how he had put these votives all around the edge of the bathtub, and he had draped it with some kind of Moroccan silk fabric that he had lying around. I know he really made it like moody kind of thing, and you know, he was like, okay, so we're gonna get into the bathtub now. Well, I must admit, I did go thinking I've got to at least maybe be prepared. So on the way there, I bought a huge bottle of Mr. Bubble, you know, bubble bath, and I did take my little leopard bikini, but I thought, there's no way, like I'm 50-something, and I'm definitely not gonna do this. and I told my mother, I might interview a rock star in a bathtub, but don't you dare, okay, fine. So I got to the hotel room, and Andy was just so seductive, and we were getting along so famously, and I showed him the old tape that we had done all those years ago. We were shooting that as well, me showing it to him, and it was all so charming. And he said, okay, let's do it. And I thought, okay, what the heck, let's do it. This time he wore a little, boxer briefs though, so that's fine. And I actually, I got into my bikini, sucked it in as much as I could, and got into the bathtub with him. The candles were all lit. We ordered a couple of Cosmos, from room service. I think he lit up a joint, so I thought, okay, I could get into this. And all of a sudden, there I was, feeling like, okay, and we started talking about art and life and the meaning of it all, and it was one of the best, most comfortable, coziest, most intimate interviews I'd ever done in my life. And at one point, Andy took like a big toke off the joint and tossed his hair back as we were like drinking the Cosmos, and his hair caught on fire. And I'm like, ah! And I dropped the microphone in the bathtub. I mean, could have like totally electrocuted ourselves. The photographer is there because we had a photographer, Paul Alexander, who was snapping pictures, and the cameraman's like rolling on the whole thing. And needless to say, check it out on YouTube. Just Google, Andy Summers hair on fire bathtub, and you'll find it. It was a wonderful piece of television.
Or Jeanne Beker leopard skin bikini. Either one, you'll find it.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
That's an amazing story. I'm, from an industry point of view, I guess, I'm fascinated with the fact that this was a Canadian product that you developed that was syndicated all over the world. That was exported and popular all over the world. That, Jessica Alba would go, I've watched you all the time. How did that happen? How do you make that happen? Because I think a lot of people will be curious about that.
Oh, well, I mean, in those days, we just had a really good distribution arm at Chum City International, I believe it was called, and they just really got it out there, and people were looking for cheap television, universal, kind of subject matter. People had a voracious appetite for it because not that many people were doing it, because not that many people had access in those early days. We were doing it with a style that was, quite entertaining. It wasn't costing us a lot to do the show. It was, we always used to joke, it's like $1.98 productions out of City TV. So we managed to get it out there, and VH1 picked it up at one point, and in those days, I think they were paying us $75,000 an episode for it, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
That was like in the late 90s. Sorry, the late 80s, early 90s. And we ended up really getting this show out there and opening this glamorous, window onto a world that at that point had not been exposed. And so there were kids growing up like in small towns in northern Ontario, or in Bulgaria, or in Iceland, or in Lebanon, or wherever they were, watching this world of fashion before their eyes, and realizing that, hey, maybe there's a place for me in this world. I got, and to this day, get so many kids that come up to me, kids I call them now, young people who are working in the industry, designers, makeup artists, hairstylists, photographers, editors. They got into fashion because of fashion television, because what they saw us do. I mean, Brad Goreski, who's like one of the hottest young stylists around these days, starts his book off. He has a new book that just came out recently. The first chapter of his book, he talks about how he was growing up in a small town, watching fashion television and watching me, sort of in the trenches, reporting, and it just exhilarated him to such a degree that he wanted to pursue a career in fashion. So
it's
that's
also
quite rewarding.
It's the drama you gave it too. I think that a lot of people found inspiring, because I mean, even working with you on the royal wedding last year, I mean, I was on the edge of my seat wondering about the dress and who designed the dress, and oh my God, the latest is in, I know it's House of McQueen, oh my God, I mean, it was riveting. I mean, you love it. That's what I think that's what people...
I love it. I don't know what, what I... I can't, honestly, I don't love that. I don't love the clothes that much. Yes, okay, they're fine, they're beautiful. Some of them are quite artful and brilliantly designed and all that stuff. But I love people. I mean, I really, really love people. Yeah. And I really love the way people express themselves. And I think clothing is an incredible tool to do that. It's a wonderful way of showing the world who we are, and of reading people. You don't always you know, what you see isn't always what you get, that's for sure. And great style has nothing to do with the labels that you put on your back, you know, that's for sure. And it really has little to do with the clothes, too. It has to do with, you know, the way you carry yourself, you know. But all that being said, clothing does add a most interesting layer onto us.
Well, it's a form of expression. It's art, but ultimately it's about people and about good stories.
It's the one creative decision that everybody gets to make every day. You know, you go to your closet, unless you're living in a nudist colony, you know, you go to your closet and you decide, okay, how am I going to put that together? How am I going to present myself to the world? And that's what's so exhilarating about living, you know, in this particular time and space and place. Because fashion has never been more accessible. It's all about the high-low mix. People are being encouraged to mix it up. You don't have to pay a lot at all to wear something fabulously expressive. And people are really being encouraged to do their own thing. You know, fashion used to be about everybody doing the same thing, and now it's not at all about that. It's about the individual. So, you know, the whole business of trends, you know, what's in, what's out, you know, that's sort of old news too. So I really think we're you know, this is a time, you know, I remember there was a period where I worried about, oh, we're living in such a homogenous society, you know, it's just terrible. But all of a sudden, you know, we're not anymore. At least it certainly doesn't appear that way with the way people are turning themselves out. I think that's great.
We've got a few minutes for questions from the floor. If anybody would like to ask a question, maybe we could bring the house lights up a little bit so we can see. Oh, great, right over here.
Hi, I'm interested in how you managed to stay in Toronto and do this forever. Like the pull to move to New York, to move to LA, to move to Paris. Like, we're so proud of the Canadians that have stayed, and I'm just wondering how you resisted and how you managed to pull it off.
Believe me, there were lots of times when I thought I should be moving here. I also had an interesting experience. You know, so many things. We really just talked about the new music and fashion television. There was a period when I was also reporting for Entertainment Tonight out of Los Angeles. Not the ET Canada that we know today, but you know, the original Entertainment Tonight would be, even before Mary Hart was on the show. Dixie Watley was on there. This is a long time ago.
Dixie Watley, right?
Yeah, do you remember
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw, you know, on TV, like, wow, they're doing this show that's infotainment. You know, that was the buzzword at the time. You know, hey, I've been doing that for City Pulse News. I do those kinds of stories. I should go and, you know, Canada should be represented on Entertainment Tonight. And I remember going to LA, going to Paramount Studios. I mean, I can't believe I did this. And actually,
you just went uninvited.
Yeah, no, I found out, I looked at the end credits, there was a guy named Vin DeBona, who was the producer of Entertainment Tonight at the time, put in like 500 calls to him, you know, it was like, started sending, you know, and he finally got him on the phone, told him, listen, I report from Canada, you know, you should have Canadian stories on there, you know, there's so many films being shot in Canada now, I could get on the film sets because I'm already doing it for, you know, City Pulse News. And he said, okay, well, like, send us your tape and let's see. So I sent him a demo reel. He thought it was, you know, impressive, I guess. And before I knew it, there I was going down to Paramount Studios and meeting the gang at Entertainment Tonight, and they hired me to be their Canadian correspondent. You know, and that was exciting. And I thought, well, here I am. I'm working for a big LA show, yet I'm still in Canada. You know, that's pretty good. And as the years went by, and I decided, you know, really made a conscious decision that I wanted to have kids, and I had waited sort of a long time to have them, even though I only took 2 weeks off with each kid. Because again, Moses Neimer was, there's a line of 20-year-olds outside my office door. If you don't, you know, come back to work right away, we're going to give your job to someone else. I mean, this was the years before there were, you know, mat leave. So I was so determined to have it all that I thought, you know, I waited as long as I could, I felt, before I decided to have kids. And once my career started really bubbling up, which was right around the time that, you know, Fashion Television, you know, launched, and wow, okay, I've got a hit show, and you know, I should have my kids now, but you know, it was too late to move to LA. It felt like, or if I would have moved there, what would I have done with my kids? You know, my husband was here. He, you know, he was a disc jockey doing a morning show in Toronto. My parents were here, and my dad was, you know, really ill at the time, and you know, and I was it. I have a sister who lives in LA, but I don't know. I just decided to, you know, stay here. It just seemed like a place where maybe I could cultivate, you know, I could get my tentacles out there and really still cultivate this career for myself. You know, in later years, as my kids got older, and you know, I certainly thought Paris, I'm so in love with Paris, I thought, why don't I just live in Paris? It'd make it so much easier. I'll base myself out of there. You know, we could still maybe do the show, just I would be based out of Paris. You know, I have I guess, you know, one of the main reasons maybe that I'm even still here too is I've got a wonderful mom who I'm very, very close to, and she's a wonderful spirit. She's 91 years old. She's a Holocaust survivor. She's tough as nails on some levels, but she's got Parkinson's, and she, you know, and I'm it. Like, I'm it. We don't have a family except for, you know, my daughters who are, you know, at the age now where they're moving to and fro. So I really feel like I'm anchored here in Canada. I really am, you know. I don't know, one day would I, you know, have the opportunity? I don't know, you know, I just turned 60. I still feel like, you know, I got a lot of fire left in me, and a lot more television and many more stories. But it seems now the way the world has worked, you can go anywhere, you can be anywhere and still report and still spin your stories. You don't really have to be in any one long location. And Canada is a brilliant place to, again, as I say, see the forest for the trees, to really, you know, not get caught up in the hype, to really reflect a little bit. And I think that's why we really do turn out such great artists and such great writers especially, and such great journalists, because we're great storytellers here, because we can reflect a little more clearly. There's a little less noise in this country in a most beautiful way.
Another question over here.
Hi, Jeanne, what a wonderful hour we're spending with you. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about whether social media has changed the fashion experience in your show and your thoughts on that.
You're a manic tweeter.
Yes,
I've told
I do.
you this. What I love about Jeanne is she really takes. I'm answering the question, but I love the fact that you tweet from the runway, and I feel like I'm there.
Oh yeah, I get a lot of those comments, and that gives me a lot of joy, because it's all about sharing, and I feel so privileged to, you know, have the front row seat, or to be in the eye of the storm sometimes, to be able to share that. I'm a very impatient person, and I think maybe a lot of people in media are, because it's, you know, media should be immediate, and you want to. So with Twitter, that's why I love it. It's just a short little messages that, you know, you tell people where you are, and right away you can hear what they have to say if you want. You can, you know, and it's like, wow, they're really out there and they're really listening, and this is what they think about what I just said, and you can have a dialogue and you can answer them back, and I absolutely love that. It's the natural medium for reporting on fashion. Absolutely the natural one. It's also such for so many reasons. One of the obvious reasons, besides just, you know, the absolute immediacy of it, is that it's a very democratic medium. It's really, anyone can access it from anywhere in the world very easily, and it doesn't cost anything to do. You can do your own, you know, and some of the most wonderfully sophisticated blogs and fashion websites that kids have, and you can just sort of be your own, you know, fashion star with your own little thing going on, and it's fantastic. And that's one of the best things about what's happened to fashion, you know, this past decade, is the degree to which it has been democratized. And yet, as I said before, this is an industry, both the fashion industry and the television or digital industry. You know, it's all about communication. It's all about people. Yeah. It's all about interaction. So it just goes together so well. And it's also made us realize that, yes, there are the expert fashion editors, and we're always going to want to hear those educated points of view from those who do indeed have a great frame of reference. You know, but at the end of the day, I do care about what the 15-year-old girl on the street thinks, you know, of what I'm wearing, or what she's wearing, or what the newest trend is. You know, that's great too. And that the fact that you can really have that cross-generational dialogue going, you know, because people of all ages use it. I just can't say enough about it. It's really, it really has changed the industry in a most wonderful way. I think, you know, some people complain that it's made things too immediate, you know, and people, you know, just are knocking stuff off. You know, there's that problem too, because people are immediately seeing, you know, what's coming out down the runway, and people are copying it, and, you know, but you can't, you know, you can't fight it. It's like, you know, once we've opened, you know, Pandora's box, you know, it's out there, the technology and the information, and I really look forward to seeing great things and further more exhilarating synergies between these media. I think that's something that I'm sad to say we never did with Fashion Television. We never had a, you know, a red hot website and of all shows with the brilliant archives that we have. We should, and that's hopefully something, you know, that we will do in the future. I think it's a great way of reaching out to people and really letting them see just what a rich history we've got to offer.
I remember trying to direct message Jeanne last year on Twitter, and I said, hey, you need to follow me. And it's an incredibly poignant answer that you had. You said, I don't follow anybody.
Well, I didn't for a while, but I do now.
Which, when I think about it now, is very poignant coming from you.
Because I didn't think I had enough time to look at all these messages that people, you know, would just be sending. I thought, okay, if someone sent me, you know, a tweet, you know, I could see that and I could tweet back, but I didn't really want to know what you had for breakfast.
I didn't take it personally.
But now I have like well over 80 people that I follow too, so.
Oh, I'm going to check.
So yeah. Oh God, I hope you're on the list.
So do I.
I'm putting you on it immediately.
Do we have time for one more question, if anybody, over here?
Hi, Jeanne.
Hi.
A couple of years ago, I worked an event that you did at Gilda's Club, Jeanne Beker's Closet, which was fantastic. And I just wanted to know, like, you seem so generous and you're inspiring. What do you feel like your personal mission is in life?
Oh. You're good.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a good one.
You know, I would hope that it's to make people and make myself feel better about the human condition. I don't know if that makes any sense in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to, you know, I want to feel good about my life and about life, and I want people to feel good too. So I think that's why I'm in, you know, the entertainment industry to begin with. You know, I want to entertain and I want to share stories. I want to inspire people, and I want to. I just want to see, you know, the beauty and things. I know that sounds, you know, pretty maudlin at this point, but I think there's so much that we can learn from each other, and I think and I know anyone that's read my books, or, you know, like I'm candid to a fault. You know, my mother's always saying, you have to tell them so much, you have to tell them everything. You know, the way I write about my life in the newspaper, and, you know, I'm just, my life is really an open book. I think that's the one thing that we have to give to one another. You know, I don't understand these celebrities, or, you know, they're, no, you know, very private. They don't want to, you know, like, this is my public persona, but, you know, no, you're not allowed to look inside, and, you know, okay, it's their prerogative, but I just say, oh, no, I mean, this is all about really sharing it, you know, and revealing ourselves, and myself, warts and all, you know, and, yeah, if you don't like it, lump it.
You know, I think Jeanne is an inspiration to many people who are here and people who are watching for her tenacity, but I think it's your talent and your heart that really come through. You're amazing, and you're an inspiration to me, and it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Seamus,
Jeanne
for
Beker,
being here.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.